Chapter 1. The stage is set. The clock above the kitchen door at Ciel ticked past 8 p.m. on March 8, 2025. The restaurant, perched atop an Atlanta skyscraper, shimmered with wealth. Crystal chandeliers casting golden light, white linens crisp against dark wood. Aisha Monroe, 28, moved through the tables, her black uniform a shadow amid the glow. Her tray held a bottle of Chateau Margaux and 4 glasses, her hands steady despite the ache in her legs from a double shift. 3 years at Ciel had taught her to blend in, to serve without being seen, until tonight. At table 12 sat Ricky Hargrove, a real estate mogul whose empire stretched across the southeast. His silver hair gleamed under the lights, his tailored suit a badge of his $200 million net worth. At 52, he'd built his fortune on foreclosed homes, snapping up despair after the 2008 crash and turning it into gold. Tonight, he was half drunk on Bordeaux, half bored with his 3 companions. 2 bankers and a lawyer, all white, all laughing at his every quip. His voice boomed, a king holding court. Aisha approached, pouring the wine with quiet precision. Ricky's eyes flicked to her name tag, then lingered on her face, her deep brown skin, her braids pulled tight. He saw an opportunity. Aisha, he said, his tone mocking. Pretty name for a waitress. You sing gospel on Sundays? Or is this your big stage? His friends chuckled, feeding his ego. She forced a smile, her jaw tight. Just here to serve you, sir. Anything else I can get you? Ricky leaned back, his gaze drifting to the grand piano in the corner. A Yamaha, its black lacquer untouched since budget cuts silenced the music. A grin twisted his lips. Say, Aisha, you ever play that thing? Bet they taught you piano in wherever you're from. The jab was crude, racial, meant to sting. His table erupted in laughter. Aisha's heart thudded. She could play better than he'd ever know. Music had been her refuge growing up in Decatur. Her Grandma Ruth's old upright piano, her sanctuary. She'd won competitions, dreamed of Juilliard, but life, Ruth's cancer, mounting bills, had stolen that future. Now it lived in her fingertips, buried under years of waiting tables. I've played some, she said, hoping to deflect. Ricky clapped, delighted. Oh, this I gotta see. Go on, girl, play us something. Entertain us. His command drew eyes from nearby tables. Aisha glanced at her manager, Ms. Deborah, who nodded curtly. Don't make a scene. Humiliation burned, but defiance flickered too. She set her tray down. All right, she said, and walked to the piano. Chapter 2. The song begins. Aisha sat, the bench creaking under her. The keys gleamed, cool and familiar. The room hushed, a mix of curiosity and condescension in the air. Ricky leaned forward, smirking, expecting a fumble, a punchline for his night. She closed her eyes, shutting out his gaze, the snickers, the weight of his arrogance. Her fingers pressed down, and Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. Op. 9 No. 2 spilled forth. Soft, haunting, perfect. The melody wove through the room, each note a thread of pain and beauty. Aisha's hands danced, her body swaying as the music consumed her. This wasn't just Chopin. It was Ruth's hymns, her teenage triumphs. Every late shift endured. The restaurant froze. Waiters paused, diners stilled, the clink of glass silenced. The nocturne swelled, climbing to the chandeliers, a sound so pure it demanded reverence. Ricky's smirk faded. His glass hovered, his eyes widening. His friends shifted, their laughter choked off. He didn't notice, he was caught, pinned by a melody he couldn't mock. Aisha pushed into the climax, her fingers flying, the music a quiet fury. She thought of every sneered girl. Every door slammed shut. The final notes lingered, resolute, then faded. Silence held, then applause erupted. From a couple near the window, a family by the bar, until the room roared. She stood, her hands trembling, her face calm. She returned to table 12, picking up her tray. Anything else, sir? She asked Ricky, her voice steady. He blinked, red creeping up his neck. That was good, he stammered, the words small. His friends avoided her gaze. Aisha nodded and turned away, head high. Chapter 3. The Crack in the Armor. Ricky Hargrove didn't sleep that night. Back in his penthouse overlooking Peachtree Street, he sat in a leather armchair, a tumbler of bourbon untouched. The city glittered below, a kingdom he'd conquered. But his mind replayed those notes. Delicate, fierce, unshakable. He'd meant to break her, to flex his power, but she'd undone him. And the room had seen it. He wasn't a man prone to doubt. Born to a middle-class family in Savannah, he'd clawed his way up. College on loans, real estate deals fueled by grit, and a knack for exploiting others' misfortune. He'd built Hargrove Properties into a juggernaut, buying cheap after the crash, selling high to developers. People called him ruthless, he called it smart. Feelings were for the weak, remorse a luxury he couldn't afford. But tonight, something shifted. Aisha's music wasn't just skill. It was a mirror, reflecting a part of him he'd buried. He remembered his mother, a seamstress who'd hummed spirituals while she worked, her hands calloused but gentle. She died when he was 19, and he'd vowed never to be poor again. That vow had hardened him, turned him into a man who mocked waitresses for sport. Yet Aisha's playing, so raw, so alive, cracked that hardness. By morning, the video hit X. Waitress owns rich jerk with insane piano skills. Hashtag Aisha the pianist. 3 million views, his stunned face the punchline. Comments stung. What a clown. She humbled him good. Ricky scrolled, his jaw tight. He wasn't used to losing, not deals, not face. But this wasn't a deal he could close. Chapter 4. The Weight of Silence. Days passed, but the melody lingered. At his office, Ricky barked orders, closed a $10 million sale, but his mind drifted. He saw Aisha's calm defiance, heard the applause that wasn't for him. His assistant, a sharp young woman named Claire, noticed. You okay, boss? You've been off. Fine, he snapped, but he wasn't. He'd always controlled the narrative, press releases, handshakes, power plays. Now the internet controlled it and he was the fool. On the 5th day, he drove to a bar in Midtown, a dive far from his usual haunts. Alone at a corner table, he drank and thought. He remembered his first big win, buying a foreclosed house from a family in tears. He'd felt nothing then, just triumph. Now he wondered who they'd been, what they'd lost. Aisha's music had done that, stirred a conscience he'd silenced. He pulled out his phone, found the video and watched again. Her hands, her poise, the way she'd turned his cruelty into art. He didn't hate her, he envied her. She had something he'd traded away, soul. Chapter 5. The Reckoning. A week later, Ricky returned to Ciel. Aisha wasn't there. She'd quit, he learned, chasing a music gig. He sat at table 12, ordered the Margot, and stared at the piano. It was quiet again. A relic. He'd come to, what? Apologize? Explain? He didn't know. Ms. Deborah approached. She's gone, she said, her tone clipped. That night changed her life. Yours too, I reckon. Ricky nodded, sipping his wine. I didn't mean for it to go like that. Didn't you? Deborah's eyes were hard. She walked away. He stayed until closing, then left a $500 tip. Petty, he knew, but it was a start. Back home, he dug through a storage box, finding an old photo. Him at 10, his mother at the piano, smiling. He hadn't cried in years, but his eyes burned now. The next day, he called Claire. Find me a music program, something for kids who can't afford it. Set up a fund. Anonymous. She raised an eyebrow but nodded. Weeks later, Aisha's first track dropped. A fusion of classical and soul, raw and electric. Climbed the charts, her name everywhere. Ricky heard it on the radio, alone in his penthouse. He didn't smile, but he listened. She'd won and he was glad. He'd forced her to play to mock her, but she'd forced him to feel. And in that, he found a redemption he hadn't sought. A quiet, fragile thing, born from a melody he'd never forget.